Dr. Sharma, can you help me understand the worship of idols in Hinduism a little bit more?
Yeah, I can relate to the question because worship of images sets Hinduism apart from many other religions which frown upon it. I think one should begin by realizing that although the Hindu may seem to be believing that the stone is God, he or she does not think that God is a stone. That is to say, he finds it useful to offer worship to the image as a way of focusing one's mind or heart but his destination is not the image or the idol. His destination is the divinity which is identified with the idol.
But how can one identify divinity with an image?
Yeah. The more formal way of making that point, I think, in theology, is to say, how can the Creator be identified with creation? And that's a very good point, because the Abrahamic religious tradition, consisting of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, insists that the Creator is distinct from the creation, independent of the creation, and not only distinct but radically distinct from creation. And one can see how, within such a theology, it would be very hard to condone the worship of images. Now we have to address, in order to get around this, a major point, namely how the concept of divinity differs when we come to Hinduism. The formal way of expressing this point is to say that God, the reality or divinity, in the Abrahamic religions is transcendent. Is a transcendent divinity. It transcends or goes beyond creation. The divinity in Hinduism, however, is considered both transcendent as well as immanent. Now, what do we mean when we use these words? What we mean is that the universe is contained within God or the divine. But the divine, God, is not exhausted by it. It is more than the universe. So the divine contains the universe and is more than it. The fact that it is contained makes the divinity immanent. The fact that it goes beyond makes it transcendent. So the divinity is both transcendent and immanent in Hinduism. One way of understanding these terms would be would be to look at two figures, 5 and 7. Is 7 more than 5? 7 transcends 5. Does 7 contain 5? 5 is immanent in 7. If you have such a doctrine of the divine, then you can see how there would be less resistance or less of a problem in making something in the universe stand for the maker of the universe. But inasmuch as the charge of idolatry, which is laid at the door of Hinduism, is to be dealt with. And I grant that your question was in the nature of a question rather than a charge. But your question is both a question and a charge, depending on the attitude with which, the attitude underlying it. What baffles the Hindu is that the Christian reveres the Bible, the Jew reveres the Tanakh, even the Torah, and the Muslim reveres the Quran, and yet this is not called bibliolatry.
So, Dr. Sharma, if I understand what you're saying, and divinity is both immanent and transcendent in Hinduism, if for some reason there were no more images of Hindu gods, would it then be sufficient for the Hindu to pray to something else or worship something ordinary in the world? Or
Absolutely. Hinduism does not require idolatry. It accepts idolatry, what is called idolatry, and should preferably be called image worship to make it more, neutral, make the expression more neutral. You can lead your life reveling in the divinity as the immanent divinity, or as the transcendent divinity, or even at the cusp of it. I referred to Shankara earlier in one of my responses. He has the following prayer: God, forgive me. He is addressing the god Shiva. God, forgive me these 3 sins of mine. That although you are beyond thought, I have tried to think of you. That although you are beyond words, I have tried to praise you in words. And although you are everywhere, I have gone on a pilgrimage. Forgive these 3 sins of mine.